Imagine paying good money to sit in a wicker chair bolted to a wooden frame while a loud engine rattles in front of you and the wind blasts your face at 70 miles an hour. That was early passenger aviation. Long before jet bridges, flight attendants, and even enclosed cabins, flying was noisy, cold, unreliable, and a little bit terrifying. So how did we get from that to a global airline industry? Let's go back to the beginning. Before we do so, here's a word from me, your YouTube host. Hello, I'm John and welcome to John's Box, my YouTube channel, and today it's aviation, the past, the present and the future of civil aviation. This is part one, more or less where the whole industry began. Part one is called the fledgling industry. So fledgling, as you may know, means immature, just about coming, like a bird, young bird that has just come out and is on its first legs or wings. It's inexperienced, it's immature, and it's underdeveloped. And that's where it all began around the time of the First World War. Actually, flights had been carried out even earlier than that, but the fledgling industry is that period during and after the First World War. The series is based on a book which I purchased a long time ago, which is called, there we go, A History of Passenger Aircraft, William Sweetman. It's published for W.H. Smith. So I remember buying this book as a 15 or 16 year old when I was really also into aviation at that time. I'd like to show you, you've just heard the introduction, so I'd like to show you just a few photos from that before we move on with this video. And air travel, as you can see here, you're sat in wicker seats, and there's just a comparison with the more modern Boeing 727 and something much less modern. It was trimotor, Ford trimotor, also with 3 engines actually, one at the front, 2 at the side. Maybe that's a later plane there, I will clarify. And more examples of the first passenger planes, biplanes, as you can see here. They will be appearing more in the course of the video. The first sort of aerodromes here you can see. I'll try and write descriptions on it. That one is one of them is at Le Bourget Airfield in 1921. This one. Yep, Le Bourget, one of Paris's first airports, and maybe one more. I'll show you. There's actually this Ford trimotor here in colour, and the interior of aircraft. In those days, I'm sure aircraft travel was only for the very, very rich who could afford that kind of luxury. Well, it wasn't really flying in luxury as you can imagine today. Aircraft were noisy, cabins were unpressurized, and actually they were dangerous, even as a matter of fact. So we're going to have a look at how the war changed everything. The first real airliners, not airliners. Airliners would be Boeing's, airlines would be American or Delta. It talks about also America's different path, the first purpose-built airlines, and that's led to the foundation being laid for what we have today. And sit back and relax and enjoy the footage that follows, which will include my voiceover and some videos and photos. See you again before the end of the video. The spark of flight. When the Wright brothers flew in 1903, they proved powered flight was possible, but they didn't create an airline industry. In fact, for years after that first flight, aeroplanes were mostly entertainment. Barnstormers, air shows, daring stunts. Yes, you could pay for a ride, but it wasn't transportation, it was an experience. Aircraft were made of wood and fabric, powered by temperamental engines, and completely exposed to the weather. There were no airports, no air traffic control, no navigation systems, just a pilot, machine, and a lot of courage. Commercial aviation? It barely existed. War changes everything. Then came World War I, and suddenly aviation wasn't entertainment anymore. It was essential. Governments poured money into aircraft production. Engineers raced to improve speed, power and reliability. Factories scaled up. In just 4 years, aviation technology leapt forward. By 1918, thousands of aircraft had been built. Thousands of pilots had been trained. Engines were stronger. Designs were more refined. And when the war ended, there were surplus aircraft everywhere, and pilots looking for work. That's when people started asking a new question. If we can fly bombs and soldiers, why not passengers? The first real airlines. In 1919, the first scheduled international passenger service began between London and Paris. One of the pioneers was air transport and travel. They used converted military aircraft. Bombers turned into airliners. In France, planes like the Farman F-60 Goliath carried over a dozen passengers inside an enclosed cabin. That may not sound revolutionary today, but at the time, it was extraordinary. For the first time, aircraft weren't just machines of war, they were becoming machines of connection. But flying was still expensive, weather-dependent, frequently delayed, and occasionally dangerous. You didn't fly because it was convenient. You flew because it was astonishing. America's different path. In the United States, passenger aviation didn't take off right away. Instead, it was mail that kept the industry alive. The US government funded air mail routes, and that steady income allowed small operators to survive. Pilots flew across mountains, deserts and farmland, often navigating by railway lines and rivers. It was risky work, but those mail routes became the backbone of what would eventually become major airlines. Without mail contracts, passenger aviation in America might have stalled completely. The first purpose-built airliners. By the early 1920s, designers started thinking differently. Instead of converting military aircraft, why not build planes specifically for passengers? One breakthrough was the Junkers F-13, one of the first all-metal airliners. Metal meant strength, durability, and safety. Then came multi-engine aircrafts like the Fokker F-7 and the Ford Trimotor. 3 engines instead of 1. If one failed, you could still keep flying. That single idea, redundancy, changed everything. Cabins became enclosed, windows were added, noise was reduced, flying was still an adventure. But it was becoming something else too. It was becoming practical. Building trust. There was one last hurdle, public confidence. Accidents happened, engines failed, weather forecasting was primitive. People were fascinated by airplanes, but they didn't necessarily trust them. Governments began introducing regulations. Pilots needed licenses. Aircraft were inspected. Standards were created. Slowly, aviation began to look less like a daredevil sport and more like an industry. The foundation is laid. By the late 1920s, something remarkable had happened. In just 20 years, aviation had gone from fragile experiments to scheduled international services, or scheduled if you prefer. The key ingredients were in place: trained pilots, reliable engines, purpose-built airliners, government support, emerging regulation. Air travel was still for the wealthy. But the foundation had been laid for the explosion of what would follow. The fledgling industry had survived its most fragile years, and it was ready to grow. In our next episode, we'll see how this young industry evolves through technological breakthroughs, economic pressures, and bold new aircraft designs in the golden era of passenger flight. So, now it's back to me, your YouTube host, for a final word. There you have it. I'm sure none of you watching remember. Those days, everybody's probably dead by now, unless there's somebody who's over 100 years old or 110. That's how old now aviation is, 120, 130 years old, in fact. So, the other thing I want to mention is that shortly there'll be the next in the series. part 2. This is a 10-part series because there are 10 chapters in this book. It's called America Surges Ahead. Yeah. If you'd like to comment or like or dislike this video, please do so, because your comments add to the content of this video. Whatever you say is part of this video. There, you can add something interesting. Perhaps, maybe I'm wrong in 1 or 2 areas. Please also support my channel. Just exceeded 1,000 subs. I'd like to go further with this. There, and I thank you for your support. And I'll see you again in another video on John's Box.